Next, we're going to Don Ma for today's Business Matters. Don, it's good to see you. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Fiona as well. Thank you for having me today. So yeah, let me just head on over to the wall here and I'll get right started. First, social media companies are pushing for a pause on a new regulation in Malaysia. So platforms with more than 8 million users in the country are now required to apply for a license. Officials are saying that the new law is part of an effort to combat cybercrime. So the country reported a sharp spike earlier this year in harmful social media content. An Asian industry group, which represents Google, Meta, X, and more, called on the government to pause the plan because of a lack of clarity over the proposed regulations. And next, ride-hailing platform Uber was fined more than $320 million in the Netherlands, and that's for allegedly sending the personal data of European taxi drivers to the United States, which, by the way, is in violation of EU rules. The Netherlands data protection watchdog, DPA, said that Uber failed to safeguard the data. The agency added that Uber has stopped the practice. So Uber can appeal the decision, and if unsuccessful, it can file a case with the Dutch courts. Also, of course, have to talk about the big announcement by Apple. So the date of its next major event has been announced, where the iPhone 16 is expected to launch. The tech giant is hosting a special event on September 9th. So mark that in your calendar, and it's going to have the tagline, "It's Glow Time." So it's not clear exactly what glow time is referring to, but embedded artificial intelligence is expected to be a key feature of Apple's latest iPhone. The device is expected to be the very first to be designed fully with AI in mind. So the September 9th event will take place at 10 a.m. Pacific time at the Steve Jobs Theater in Apple Park, and it's going to be streamed online. Also, I wanted to talk to you guys about this today. So as the Federal Reserve appears to be preparing for a possible rate cut, Brazil could be doing the opposite, set for an increase. So Brazil's central bank is warning that it's going to become increasingly difficult to talk about monetary policy without addressing fiscal issues. The bank's chief says that what needs to be looked at is how government deficits and debt is affecting inflation. He noted that there are 50 million people on social welfare payments in Brazil, compared to 43 million who are employees or entrepreneurs. Now, here in the US, the Federal Reserve Chairman has always distanced himself from the question of government spending, that is, saying that it's not his place to talk about it. And Brazil's bank chief made the comments at the Kansas City Federal Reserve annual economic conference in Jackson Hole, Wyoming last week. Now, Southwest Airlines seems to be steering straight into some turbulence with Elliott Investment Management. The activist investor is known for making major changes at companies. In a letter to Southwest shareholders, Elliott pressed for new outside leadership to improve the airline's performance. The airline stock down a bit today. Elliott also warned that it's prepared for a proxy fight since the hedge fund revealed its stake in Southwest. It has been trying to oust the CEO and his predecessor, who is a current executive chairman. Elliott owns about 9.7% of Southwest's outstanding shares. Okay, now let's go to Canada. The Labour Board has ended an unprecedented shutdown at the country's largest railways. But, you know, the underlying unrest remains unresolved despite that. So talks between the Teamsters and the Canadian National Railway, along with Canadian Pacific Kansas City, had broken down, leading to a standoff. And as tensions escalated, the companies locked out workers, prompting the union to plan a strike. The Canadian Industrial Relations Board has now requested binding arbitration and mandated that existing contracts remain in effect until a new deal is reached. In a statement, the Teamsters expressed dissatisfaction, claiming this move significantly diminishes workers' rights and that they intended to appeal the decision. The disruptions were expected to have severe impacts on farmers and agriculture and companies in both Canada and as well as in the US. Now, let me mention oil as well. The price of US crude jumped today. Perhaps it is driven by a halt in production in Libya and escalating tensions in the Middle East. So Libya's eastern-based government announced that all oil fields would be closed and stopping productions. And exports, last month, Libya produced more than 1 million barrels per day. That's according to OPEC sources. There's also the conflict in the Middle East that could be adding to the rise in oil. Israel launched preemptive strikes in southern Lebanon over the weekend to prevent an attack by Iranian-backed Hezbollah. In response, U.S. oil prices rose about 3% today, give or take. Now, from memes to deepfakes, if it was made with artificial intelligence, a new bill wants to make it clear. So lawmakers in California have introduced a bill that's going to require tech companies to label AI-generated content. ChatGPT developer OpenAI is supporting the proposed legislation. The company said source transparency, for example, like a watermark, right, is important, especially during an election year. It's also another AI-related bill, and that bill would force developers to conduct safety tests on some of their own models. And Microsoft has announced a cybersecurity conference. The tech giant says it's going to be about steps to improve systems after the CrowdStrike global IT outage last month. Executives plan to meet with CrowdStrike and other security companies in September, and the conference will be at Microsoft's headquarters in Washington State on September 10th. So a CrowdStrike software update, if you guys remember, in July caused outages for more than 8 million Windows computers worldwide. So disruptions, ranged across industries, from major airlines to healthcare and as well as banks. Delta Airlines said it cost the company more than $500 million. Delta is now seeking damages from both CrowdStrike and Microsoft. Shareholders have also sued CrowdStrike. The company has lost about $9 billion of its market value since the outage. Okay, a little bit of China-related news right now. IBM announcing plans to completely close its research and development operation in China. The U.S. tech company has faced challenges growing in the Chinese market and has seen a dip in demand for its hardware. Now, according to reports, IBM's market share in China has fallen in recent years. This is due to a push to support more domestic brands. IBM reported that its revenue dropped nearly 20% last year. Also in the report, an IBM executive told employees that R&D functions will move to other overseas facilities. And here's a statement. A spokesperson said that these changes would not impact its ability to support clients in the Greater China region. And Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is slapping 100% tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles. And of course, this is coming as U.S. automakers call Chinese cars a colossal threat. Take a look at this story.
A 100% tariff on Chinese-made electric vehicles.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced Monday he's slapping substantial tariffs on all imported Chinese electric vehicles, or EVs, and a 25% tariff on Chinese steel and aluminum.
Actors like China have chosen to give themselves an unfair advantage in the global marketplace, compromising the security of our critical industries and displacing dedicated Canadian autos and metal workers.
Ford CEO Jim Farley said last month the fitness of Chinese in EVs will eventually wash over our entire industry in all regions. Elon Musk says Chinese car makers will, quote, demolish rivals if there are no trade barriers.
They own the market, they're controlling the market. So this is where tariffs might be a benefit until we can catch up.
Auto expert Lauren Fix says the Chinese government has subsidized its car makers for a long time and it's purchased many mines needed to make EVs. China dominates the EV battery supply chain and is the world's biggest EV market. Fix believes China wants to flood the market, put competitors out of business, and then jack up prices. She thinks tariffs may help with this.
There is some protectionist to that, but also it's important to note that if you let the free market reign, people will buy what they can afford and what they want. But if they can't afford it because they don't have jobs, then they're not going to either buy it or they're going to be buying the lower quality and lower priced product.
President Biden will raise tariffs on EVs to over 100% this year, up from 27.5%. He says the Chinese Communist Party subsidizes its car makers so much the businesses don't even need to make a profitable product. He calls this an unfair advantage. Canada's tariff on EVs will take effect October 1st. The tariffs on Chinese steel and aluminum take effect October 15th.
Meanwhile, Americans going to mark the unofficial end of summer this Labor Day weekend, and you know what that means. Airports, highways, and beaches will likely be very packed. Listen.
For those people going on road trips Thursday and Friday, the earlier the better. You want to avoid being on the roads during those peak rush hour times, especially the afternoon rush. So between 4 and 7 p.m. are the worst times to be on the roads those days.
And as well, the TSA is expecting to screen more than 17 million people. And this is a record for the Labor Day period. AAA also saying that bookings for domestic travel are running 9% higher than last year. International trips are about 4% down. Now, according to transportation data provider INRIX, the worst time to drive on Thursday will be between 1 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. So keep that in mind. And motorists will want to avoid the road on Friday between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. Now, on Saturday, drivers will want to avoid the 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. window. And according to INRIX data, the return trip Monday is expected to be rough all day. All right, and with that, all the stories for today's Business Matters. Hope you guys found that useful.
Very useful, Don. I'm curious about these tariffs on EVs. I mean, coming from China, they seem pretty significant, 100% tariffs. How could that affect domestic car makers, EV car makers in China?
Well, we've already seen, this is just one example, and perhaps we'll see more of this. So in the EU, because the EU has also implemented tariffs, right, on Teslas. So because Tesla has production capacity in China, so it's, getting cars from there. And Tesla, what they did was pass on those tariff costs onto consumers by raising car prices. So, I mean, potentially that's one impact, but we do know that China, subsidizes its domestic companies, some of them at least. So there's definitely worry of unfair competition.
Sure.
Yeah, very interesting stories today. I'm well, I guess not looking forward to that rush during Labor Day weekend. It's going to be a lot of people.
Stay home to avoid the rush. Best tip.
Don Ma, now our traffic advisor. Thank you.
Thank you.